Hi everyone, this is Liz with Edmund Designs, and today I'm going to be walking you through one of my more popular requests, not only for dolls that I make, but requests for a video tutorial. So this is the American McGee's Alice, and we're just going to start off with a basic 4.5-inch body. So I'm using a 22 gauge floral wrapped wire and black DMC floss. And then I'm going to use a 20mm wooden bead for the head. I'm just going to twist down about 3 twists, and then I'm measuring. I like my arms to be 1.75 inches, so 1 3/4 inches. The typical bodies, traditionally I've seen them made at 1.5 inches. I like my arms to be longer because this is a gaming doll, and I like to have the ability to kind of just bend and shape the doll, especially if they're holding weapons. And then I twist the torso, usually about 1 inch worth. That can vary depending on your doll. And then I'm going to straighten out the legs. I'm going to measure from the top at 4.5 inches. I'm going to bend where our feet are going to be. And then I'm just going to take my pliers and bend and shape the feet and ensure that they are both the same size. And then I'm going to use my wire cutters to trim that down. Next, I'm just going to use a very pale skin tone. It just happens to be number 5 in DMC floss, but traditionally I use number 842. And then I'm going to use my tacky glue. I prefer this to hot glue. Hot glue definitely has its place, but for these dolls, this is going to dry clear. You're going to have more work time, and especially on the hair designs and things like that, I highly recommend utilizing the tacky glue instead. And it also allows you a lot of different workplaces that you don't have to be near a plug-in, so that's extremely helpful. I'm just going to twist and wrap this around and ensure that all of the edges are glued. And I'm just going to continue wrapping. Something that you can't see, I'm extremely particular about this method, but I am slowly untwisting my floss here. That way it lays completely flat, especially on areas that are going to end up showing. This particular doll, she just has cap sleeves, so it's important for her arms to be extremely smooth, and this isn't going to be covered up later. If you're working on the torso or the legs, it doesn't matter as much. But I do take my time, even though that this video has been sped up. And I am gluing these individual layers. You don't have to. Granted, these dolls will stay together all on their own, just with very good wrapping techniques. But this particular doll, she has striped leggings, and when you get enough layers built up, they can kind of start to slide around on you a little bit. So I do like to secure them with glue every so often. And I'm only going to go down to where her ankle is because she has boots. So I'm going to show you my technique for boot making. So don't do the feet, come back up, and then you're going to end up doing the exact same thing on the other leg. And for those of you that don't know who this doll, I'm sure you do because you clicked on this video, but I absolutely love the American McGee Alice games. And essentially what that is it's the story of Alice in Wonderland, but instead it seems that she has perhaps mental health issues and her family died in a fire, and this is one of her coping mechanisms. So it's a darker version of Alice in Wonderland, and I just absolutely love it since the game first came out and subsequent games, and there is a new one that is supposed to be coming out, and it's one of my favorites, and I've made several different characters, or not necessarily different characters, but Alice and her different costumes. So anyways, her leggings are striped, so we're going to take white and black, and I'm just securing it around the torso. Adding a little bit of my glue, and this can take me a few tries. Sometimes I end up coming back, unwinding and then going back and redoing, because I like them to be even. I want the white and black thickness to be the same, so I'm trying to make sure that I am not wrapping over areas or getting them too close, because I want the black and white to be pretty consistent. So for this first leg, I'm going to wrap all the way down with the stripes, because I have not determined where my boot is yet, but you'll see on the other leg that you don't have to wrap down that far if you already know where your boot is going to start. And you'll see what I mean on the next leg. But here I'm just securing my white piece. So I'm going to snip the white thread, and I'm going to wrap around it and secure it with the black thread. And I'm opening up the foot because we are going to start working on the boot. And this way, the tip of your boot or shoe is going to be black, and you won't have to come back in and correct that or anything. I'm going to close it to keep that nice and secure. You want to work sparingly with this glue when it comes to black embroidery floss. Yes, it will dry clear. However, if you've touched it with any of your fingers or your hands, it will dry more white. So you want to use it sparingly on black, and you want to make sure that you're not going back and having to touch it or try to wipe it off, because that will leave residue that you're going to have to address later. So I'm wrapping it towards the top again and deciding about how high I want her boots. She does have significantly high boots, and we have to be able to fit 5 boot buckles on her boot, okay? So you can kind of just gauge it, and I will show you how to make those boot buckles here in a bit. So you could make those ahead of time if you've watched this entire video, or skip ahead, see how those are made, and use those to kind of gauge how tall this boot is gonna be. Because it will vary just kind of depending on your techniques. But I would say you're going no more than an inch. It really, in terms of where it starts from the ankle, not the boot in its entirety. Okay, so same thing on the other side. This takes a little bit longer because I am trying to make sure that I am matching. And sorry that it's a bit off camera. I'm trying to get used to this new setup, and working on dolls while trying to film and have everything at the right angle is certainly a skill set to be practiced. So I am working on that, and I will be more mindful of it in the future. But as you can see, I've had to go back and rewrap, and I'm constantly comparing to make sure that my black and white lines are lining up. I don't want them staggered. That's just a personal preference. And the more you do this, I've had, every doll's different. I put that as a disclaimer in when I'm making these, that it can become very difficult to, in terms of consistency. So they can vary slightly. So yours will as well. All right, so you can see here I didn't have to wrap all the way down because now I know where my boot is going to begin. The most important thing is that they are starting in the same place. We're gonna do like we did last time. And I do go back and forth a little bit, as you see, from the tip to the ankle, because I'm trying to even it out, and I want it to have the foot of that boot. I want it to have a particular shape. I want it to look like a boot. So I just kind of work back and forth until I've gotten a shape that I think works for this particular doll. And then I'm just going to take a little bit more of that glue on the back, wrap it around, and our boots are good to go. Okay, so next I am using 820 for her top. Now, even though this is, you see the one in my hand, it's wrapped around a clothespin. That's just where I tend to store them when I've got extra. So it is 820. But dependent upon the flowers that you've gotten, I believe I got mine, well, I know I did. I got mine at Michael's, and they're blue roses. So, when I'm in the store, especially if I'm working on a new doll that I haven't worked on before, I'm going to take those flowers with me back to the embroidery floss aisle and kind of try to do a color match. So it doesn't have to be 820. It's just whatever's going to work with the flowers or fabric, because I have had to use fabric on occasion, but because of the nature of these dolls, I'm typically trying to stick with flowers. Now she has a cap sleeve, so it's gonna be it's more billowed. So I'm trying to get that shape there where it's a little thicker right next, like on the shoulders, And I'm just gonna make sure that they are even on both sides. And I'm also going to make sure that when I'm wrapping the torso that her body is a bit thicker, because we are going to have to attach an apron on her, and if you make her body or torso too thin, you're not going to have a lot to help shape her. So that's important. And you can always add more later. A lot of times I'll put the skirt on and then I go back and I add in more embroidery floss. So all of these dolls are easily altered and adjusted, well into your project. So don't worry about that. Like, it's very easy to fix mistakes. And I do put glue right on those necklines and those shoulders because it's very easy for that to slip later. And here I'm just making sure that it's nice and flat and even, untwisting my floss. and then securing it in the back. And now we're going to work on the boot buckles. So this chain, I get it at Michael's. It doesn't have any other descriptors than what you see there, okay? But this is the most important part about this chain, okay? The links in the chain are solid, okay? So when you pinch them, that they are going to be able to flatten without popping open. So they've either been soldered or they're just solid chains. And what I am doing is I am going to cut between each chain link so that I am left with just a single link. Okay, so I need 5 links for each boot. So when you're looking at chain, you're going to make sure that the link itself does not have any openings or cuts or anything, because those don't work. I've tried it, unless you don't want to bend them. So you can see we've got a single link, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut those, and I'm going to get 5 for each boot. Normally I use the antique gold, but they were out of stock, and I had to go and I had to stop in the middle of my filming. I had to go get more chain, and this is the one that I ended up with. But honestly, it looks just as good, and it's probably a better color match for the actual character. So you've got a single link. You can see it's solid. You're going to put it in your pliers and pinch. This is going to flatten your individual link. You're going to hold it with a pair of pliers, and I'm using beading pliers, and then you're going to shape it around the end of your pliers. And you can see it's got a little bit of a bow to it. They're not going to be perfect, but you're bending them so that they curve around the front of your boot. And that is going to give us our buckles. So if you need to take that back and look again, I'm not using traditional needle nose pliers. These are beading pliers, and those rounded tips are going to be very important. Not to say that you couldn't do them with any others, but that's what I find helpful. So now I'm just going to place my glue, and I want these to be evenly spaced. So I'm going to put one at the top, and then I'm going to do one on the other. I want to make sure they're lined up, but I'm going to do the top, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to do the bottom ones. That way, like I said, I can space these, and I don't want to have to keep moving them, because like I said, this glue on black, if it's moved and played with a lot, will leave a residue. Also, be prepared to drop these a lot. I did it a ton, and you're gonna see here that I stopped for a minute, and then all of a sudden I come back, and I'm gonna do the 5th one, and it's because I dropped one for the umpteenth million time. So be prepared for that. And I had to search everywhere with a magnet, and then eventually I ended up having to make another one. So just fair warning. Now here is my blue rose. I'm going to take this apart. And I'm going to be looking for a piece that's just big enough for us to cut into her skirt shape, which is a kind of a triangular shape. And I just want to make sure that enough of her leggings are going to end up showing. And so here I've decided that I've got one that's actually going to work better for the shape. And as you can see, I am trying to obtain that triangular shape. And you want it a little bit longer than where it's actually going to end up ultimately being, because once you've glued it in place, that gives you a chance to shape your skirt and kind of cut it to shape. Now, as you notice, it's not going to cover the back. These petals aren't big enough, and we are going to come back in and cover the back with an additional petal. I'm just going to keep trimming. I want a nice, crisp, flat edge. I want it to be nice and even. And if somehow you've messed it up, it's going to peel right off. And you can see I am using hot glue, like I said. There is a time and a place for it, and attaching your petals, hot glue is usually going to be your best option. So I'm just going to do the same for the back. And you're going to work to glue it in place and trim away after it's been glued in place, just like we did with the other one. And the point here with your back piece is I'm trying to keep it out of view as much as possible, because I don't want my seams to show when you're looking at the doll head on. So again, even after you've glued in place, you still have a lot of wiggle room to get it trimmed down and all of that. So I'm just going to secure it with a little bit of hot glue. And you can see I've still got some edges showing, and again, just trimming that so that when you're looking at her head on, you're not going to see those seams. And I realize this is an extremely intricate doll, especially for like a beginner, but I feel like there's a lot of videos out there. There's other doll makers that are doing the same thing, that have very basic dolls, and it's not to say that I won't ever be doing basic ones, but This feels like a little bit more like my area. So just, I mean, let me know what you're looking for in terms of videos. I don't know how long, what my schedule will be in terms of posting, but yeah, comment on what you would like to see. So here I've just got a very big white petals. Now what we're gonna do, okay, this is for the apron. We are going to cut 2 petals, okay, that are joined right across from one another. All right, and you want that hole in the center, you want that middle section, all of it, okay? We're going to make the apron, and the apron is going to be one entire piece. So on one petal, I'm cutting down the center to the center hole. All right, that is creating the straps that go over the shoulders for our apron. So here I'm cutting a little bit more to widen the neck area. So this is the inside of that first cut that we made. And I'm just kind of slowly curving it to give a scoop neck. You could do the same thing in terms of a fabric and create your own pattern. This is just something that I like to do. I think it's really neat. And I also do it on my regular Alice in Wonderland doll as well. So if you've got any dolls that you're going to have to be doing an apron on, this I think is just really neat. But I'm sure there's easier ways to do it. There's easier ways to do everything that I do. So I'm getting an idea of where it's going to hit on her and how much thinner I'm going to have to make the straps, the chest or bodice area. And I just kind of keep going back and forth and checking. I could make a pattern, and maybe one of these days I will, but anytime that you've made something over and over again, there's always gonna, for me at least, there's always a little bit of a variation. So I fit it to each doll. And I'm just kind of slowly trimming. Her apron goes down pretty far. You don't see a ton of blue showing. I mean, a significant amount, but it's an apron. I mean, it is supposed to cover up. And I only need the straps to go up over her shoulders, mid-back, so I am able to cut off that excess. And then before you put this on, I didn't do this, I did it after the fact, but some of your petals are going to want to fray more than others, so you may just edge just the edges with you can use your tacky glue or an edge or seam glue that they use for sewing, and it keeps your edges from fraying. So sometimes I have flowers, even the same exact flower, sometimes they want to fray more, other times they're, it's a good flower day, what can I say? So this one I did have to go in and touch up with glue and make sure that it wasn't going to go anywhere. Now, okay, hot glue on these, on your white flowers, it will show. Okay, so I'm trying to put it in inconspicuous places. So she's going to have a band around her waist, so that's going to be hidden. Now, on the bottom of the skirt, I'm placing it where I'm going to be putting pockets, because the pockets are going to end up hiding those spots, or your blood splatter, okay? Because she is splattered with blood from all of her murderous rampages. And so I am trying to make sure that I'm putting that glue in places where it's ultimately not going to show, because hot glue and white flowers do not really mix that well. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we've skipped ahead because I made my bow, but honestly, all you need to do is just have a ribbon around the waist and just save yourself the trouble and buy a bow. Seriously. I am putting on her pockets, which are made out of the flower, and they're covering up those spots. Now, I did this off camera because I draw these out and then I go over them with black paint, and the way that I do that is with a sewing needle. So it's very meticulous. I didn't have my camera set up in a way that would accommodate that. Using tacky glue with these silk flowers is a bit difficult, so you're going to have to continue to press and go in and touch up and make sure that they are laying down. But you can't use hot glue on your front pockets. It'll show. So I just keep pressing them down and checking them every so often to make sure that they are secure in place. So the knife, I make it out of polymer clay. It was something I ended up doing off camera. It does have a metal wire that goes from the handle to the blade so that I don't have to worry about it falling apart. And then I sand and shape mine after the fact so that it has a little bit of a sharper edge and that it's nice and evened out and flat. Sometimes in the process of making it, that doesn't always happen. So I'm able to go back in and even it out, and it's going to be painted because I have yet to have a clay that's going to give me the look I want of a metal. So I'm actually going to be painting it with a metallic acrylic paint. I have considered possibly at some point just using aluminum or something and cutting it to shape and giving her a bit of a more realistic looking knife, but for now this is what I've been doing, and it's worked, for however many it is that I've made at this point. I kind of lost track. And then what I'm going to do is once I've painted it, I am going to just put the handle of the blade or the handle of the knife in a wooden clothespin, but any type of clip would work, and that's going to hold my knife upright and allow it to dry, because I'm not going to be able to lay it anywhere and I'm not going to spend the time to hold it. Okay, so folk art, this is the metallic paint, and you can't see, my brush is wet. It's going to give you a much smoother finish. Don't just put this on dry. I'm going to let that dry because we're going to have to put our blood spatter on there. For her hair, I'm folding it in half and cutting it because we're going to do 2 different layers. I'm going to make sure that my ends are nice and even. Trim that up. Again, we're going to use the tacky glue. You can use hot glue, but in terms of hot glue, black is one of the worst colors to be working with when it comes to hot glue. It's so hard to hide your mistakes. So I'm putting a bead of glue and I am just slowly attaching those strips of hair that we cut off. This is going to give a more full look. And with these bigger dolls, with these bigger beads, that's what you need, is a second layer. I just prefer to cut mine instead of folding it over and, you know, all that other stuff. I'm going to put another layer of glue and just make sure that those are actually laying down and secure. And then I'm going to add a little more glue because we're going to fold the top of the hair down. And just making sure that all of the glue is covered. And there's not anything terribly special about her hairstyle, so you can kind of just lay it down. And once it's dry and we've cut it, it's just side swept is really all that's going on. So you can do a very basic hairstyle in terms of it just laying down, making sure all of those edges are covered. And I'll already kind of start to sweep it to the side, just a hair. That's how it's going to dry. But I am combing it out straight first. You want to do that, cut it. Hers is shorter than waist length. And that can just be something that, you know, kind of dependent on your preferences, but I cut it about right where her bow's hitting, which is going to be mid-back or so, a little bit higher than that. You can kind of gauge it based on the pictures, like screenshots from the game and references. And then it gets swept to the side. And then I go in with a dry paintbrush and I just sweep off all of that trimmings. Here I'm gluing her to the base. That requires hot glue. The tacky glue, in my experience, does not hold. But if you don't get enough hot glue, they will pop off the stand. I use the wooden, I just use wooden circles. Sometimes they're called wooden dimes or wooden nickels. Mine are 1 inch. And I'm working to secure the knife. Ultimately, I do change the knife position because I have gone through a couple iterations of her knife positions, so I kind of forgot what I had been doing. So ultimately, I do change it, but regardless of how you want your knife, like what direction you want it pointing or how you want her to hold it, I clip the knife to her hand. You can use a clothespin, but I've actually got a pair of pliers that are tension or like compression pliers that are going to hold that in place for me and dry. And don't skimp either in terms of the glue here. You're going to want to make sure you have an adequate amount. And I don't recommend hot glue I find that polymer clay comes off of hot glue pretty easily. So here I have my blood paint mixture, so just red and a little bit of brown. And I'm taking my needle and I'm adding in the blood spatter. I do take a moment to look at my reference, which was on my phone, which is what I'm recording with. So you will see a break where I'm trying to make sure it's a little more matched up with the photo. And she also has the blood on her knife. And I don't seal it. You know, even your matte Mod Podge will create a bit of a sheen. So I don't put anything over her. I just put this paint on. And then I also have her ohm necklace, which is just a small piece of wire that I've bent into the shape. I am tying a single strand of thread around it. And I'm just going to place a little bit of glue at her neckline to secure it, and then bring those threads around her neck and glue those into place for the finishing touches, which will complete her look. So just like I said, let me know if there's anything that you want to see in the future. I don't know what my filming schedule is going to be like. I haven't ever been very consistent with that, so they kind of just come when they come, and I write ideas down for them, you know, when I think of something that I want to do or I happen to have an order, which was the case with this one, and I decided to go ahead and film it. So I hope you all have enjoyed this. Make sure to like, subscribe for notifications. I've got a Facebook, Instagram. There's plenty of places to follow me. And thank you guys so much for watching. And here is the completed American McGee's Alice. And like I said, I did change her knife position to match what I have done in the past, and is my preference in terms of how she is holding her weapon. So that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.